So I'll be just recording this so that later on I can share this presentation on YouTube for all of you. So let's get started. And feel free to interrupt me in the middle. I'll be talking about a lot of concepts, but if you have any questions which is related to any of the concept, please feel free to ask it, right away in the middle of the presentation. If it is something very generic, I'll try to explain it to everybody. If it is something very specific, we can obviously take this offline and also discuss this. But please ask a lot of questions. If you ask a lot of questions, then only I think all of us will learn a lot. I'll be trying to watch what is there on the chat as well, but I probably might not be able to look at everything on chat. But I'll try my best to follow everything on chat. Just remind me and feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question at any time. Okay, so let's get started. So let's talk about personal finance. So let me just start giving you a little start by giving you a little introduction of mine. My name is Birla. I graduated from IIT Kanpur long time back, 1995. Used to work with Infosys as well as Amazon. And after that, I have done my own ventures. I have ran restaurants. I have worked in the video making space, made a web series, did some stand-up comedy. And currently I run artificial intelligence company, conversational AI company called Concerto AI, and then run a music group called Bhule Bisre Geet. I also run fake news busting site Check for Spam, and fake news search engine called Nokia, and a music magazine called The Songpedia. So I have been involved with fairly diverse ventures in different spaces. And the whole idea of getting into personal finance was obviously it's a problem each one of us faces, right? All of us earn money as well as spend money. And it is important for us to so what we saw was that there is a big gap in our society where look, when your parents ask you to sort of I think when we are kids, all our parents ask, right, study well, otherwise what will you do in your life? What our parents are indirectly telling us is that they want you to earn money, right? So parents' focus is to make sure that their kids earn money because they can lead a reasonable life or due to that. But none of us teaches us, nobody teaches us how to manage that money, right? This is not part of your curriculum in your schooling. In schools, we teach our kids physics, chemistry, maths, languages, and things like that. But nobody teaches you how to manage your money. What I have realized in the longer run is that there are a lot of people at every age group who have a very big lack of knowledge in terms of personal finance. And so the whole idea of these workshops is that we are able to bridge that gap and make people understand in very, very simple terms. So most of the things which I'll be trying to explain will be using very, very simple terminology, trying to draw some parallels with something you can relate to so that it becomes easier for you to understand. But please do not hesitate to ask any question. Please interrupt me, unmute yourself, and please ask your questions. That way we will have a good learning experience for all of us. Okay, so let's get started with our content. I'm guessing all of you must have seen this web series on Netflix, right? Money Heist is one of the biggest web series. So yeah, that is one way of making money, right? And in this, you have obviously seen these characters making crazy amount of money, but just understand the type of risk they took for making this money, right? If you have seen all the episodes, you might have seen that some of them lost their life. They risked their life to earn that money. So just wanted to highlight that money making is basically about risk management as well. I'm just giving web series as an example, just to show you that's one way of making money. But we are not going to talk about how to make money via money heist. I don't think that is the agenda of this session. But always understand that risk management is one important part of making money. Okay, so before we get into how to manage the money, let's just talk a little bit about mindset. A lot of times we don't think about our relationship with money. All of us need money, all of us spend money, but what are the mindset blockers which most of us have, which prevent us from managing our money better? So let's talk through each of these mindsets. This is a very good answer. This is something which I think all of us feel. I think all of us feel we should have more money than what we have, but you always have somebody else. Like today, I was traveling in a cab from Thane to Kharghar, and I was talking to my cab driver for about his finances, and he was talking about the default thing was I don't have money, and his assumption was that if I have to start saving or investing somewhere, I need a lot of money to start with. So that is something which is not true. You have enough investment options where you can start with 100 rupees, 500 rupees. And my assumption is that if you are watching this session on a mobile phone or on a laptop with internet connections, you probably have 100 or 500 rupees, right? And that's pretty much probably cost of a coffee in a lot of at least posh cafes, right? So I don't have money is not the right way to think about money. You have money, you might have less money, you might have more money, but there's nothing like I don't have money. I don't have time. That can happen with a lot of people. You might be busy with managing a household. You might be busy with a job. You might be busy with some other family circumstances. So circumstances of people can be very different, but a lot of people might not have time. So the whole idea of this session is to set up a system for you where you don't need a lot of time, right? It's again a bad assumption that people need a lot of time to manage this money. It's about setting up a process and then just following that process. So it's not like that you need crazy amount of time to manage the money, right? You can do it. It's just about thinking through what is the process I will use and then just sticking to the process. And another thing which has happened more in the more recent past in last 4 or 5 years, that a lot of these things have become very easy. They are few clicks away. They are as easy as sending a WhatsApp message to somebody else. So when it is so easy, you actually don't need that amount of time to manage your money. And we will be coming up with a proper action plan which you can use by end of this session. Third thing is I don't have knowledge. That's again true for a lot of us. And that's precisely the reason why we have this session. But again, this session is just to trigger questions in your mind. There is enough stuff available on YouTube. There's enough space, enough things which are available on different platforms where you have courses on personal finance. I personally have a course which is available with the app called FWD app. There I have so there are tons of guys who have, these courses you can do. And you can actually, in those courses, you can learn how to manage money. And it might take you maybe, I would say 4 hours, 5 hours of effort, not more than that, in which you can spread across different days. This is another one which I come across, at least some people, I don't want money. Look, you should never look at money as something which you need for consumption. Look, some people might be, sadhu sant type people who don't need money, but then you can always spend it on, better things. Maybe you can donate it to charity. Maybe you can, help some people who are probably in need of help, right? So you might not want money for yourself, but you might want to leave it as legacy for your kids. So there can be multiple uses of money, and that is obviously something which is dependent on each one of us, right? Some of us love shopping, so we will go to a market and probably spend 5,000 rupees. Somebody else might be interested in books, and he doesn't mind buying books worth 5,000 rupees. So all of us are made different. So money has multiple usages, so you can obviously think through that. What is the application of money I want to do for me? I don't gamble. This is another assumption which a lot of people, whenever we talk about investment and stock markets, most of the people assume that this is equivalent to gambling. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this from your elders that ye to satta bazaar hai, right? That is a, but the whole idea is to explain to you that this is not about gambling. This is basically gambling is something very different. In gambling, what happens is the gambling organizer is who wins. Nobody else wins. Okay, but this is basically a system for you to generate consistent and large amount of wealth in the longer run. So that is what we are talking about. It's certainly not gambling. So let's move to a mindset that all of us can do it. I know there will be a lot of you who haven't done this in the past, but I think we need to get into a mindset where you believe in yourself, that you can do it. And I will try to show you a path in which you can do it. You can start your journey after the session today. So it will be a very actionable presentation, not just theory, but some practical stuff. So let's believe all of us can do it. So before we start with some complex topics, one thing I've realized is that, look, in every field, there are, a lot of jargons which are used. Like if you go to a doctor, today I met a doctor friend here in Mumbai, and, they obviously have their own set of jargons, right? Something which you'll call probably some kind of pain. They might have a scientific word for it. I have a background for computer science, so I'll have a lot of jargons like SAP or ERP or tons of jargons which are used in software industry. So what happens is that a lot of times, jab aap wo, you hear those jargons and it confuses you that, look, I am not able to understand this, right? So before we start into our journey, I just wanted to demystify some of those finance jargons which are used by tons of people. And I'll try to explain them in a very, very simple language. And please feel free to ask questions. Any questions you have, interrupt me in the middle and please ask questions. Okay, so let's first start with money. What exactly is money? Most of us see money as a piece of paper or something you see in your, when you log into your net banking, you see it as something in your, bank account, some amount in your bank account, right? But understand one thing, that that piece of paper actually has no value. The only value is that a government guarantees that this piece of this piece of paper has some value. Otherwise, there's no intrinsic value which is there in that piece of paper, right? And if you think of utility of money, so let's go back, maybe let's say a few thousand years ago, where the predominant mode was a barter system, right? So barter system is, let's say, I need wheat and somebody else has a goat, right? So now we can exchange wheat for goat, and we can, let's say I have some usage of goat, maybe I want to cut it and eat it, and the other guy was vegetarian and just wants to eat wheat. So we could have done that exchange, but there are some problems in that exchange. So it's possible that I might not need the goat at this point. I need goat 6 months later. But in barter system, that has to happen right away, right? So money gives you a sort of deferred payment option, right? So deferred payment, what I mean is that you can actually get money for your wheat, and 6 months down the line, you can use that money to buy a goat, right? So that way you can actually do a deferred transaction instead of doing a same time transaction, which you end up doing primarily when in the barter system. So it becomes sort of a store of value for you. Money is a representative store of value, where basically stores that value for you, and later on down the at a different point of time, you can use that money to buy something else which is of value to you. Otherwise, intrinsically, a piece of note actually has zero value. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about what's a bank. Bank is an entity all of us interact with. But let us just understand what is the business of a bank. So finally, what happens is that when you go to a bank, most of us will have a savings bank account. We will have some sort of bank account where we give our money to bank, and bank will give you a debit card or something else, or ATMs using which you can withdraw it whenever you want, right? And it gives you a system where you can see how much money I have. But then what bank does is, so you are basically giving a loan to the bank when you deposit your account, your salary into a bank. You are basically loaning it out to the bank. But now what bank does is, and bank typically, like if you have a savings bank account, bank will typically give you something like 2.5-3% interest. Uh, Now what the bank does with that money is that it loans out that money to different businessmen. So let's say if I'm a businessman who wants to start a restaurant, I need 50 lakh investment to start my restaurant. Now what I do is that I go to a bank and tell the bank, can you give me 50 lakh?
BK was also running a restaurant at one point in time.
Oh yeah, I was. Yeah. But thankfully I didn't take a loan. But yeah. So yeah, you'll see a lot of restauranting and food examples in my presentation for obvious reasons. I'm sure all of you know. So so then what happens is that when the bank has to give loan to, let's say, a restaurant owner, what it will do is it will give it at a higher interest rate, right? So let's say it is giving you 2.5-3%. It will give to a businessman for 10%. Now it has basically a 7% profit which bank puts in its pocket, right? And that 7% is what will run your, like ICICI Bank has Amitabh Bachchan ad. So that will pay for Amitabh Bachchan, that will pay for security of your money, that will pay for banks opening branches, banks opening ATMs, right? So that is the primary business of a bank. It's an intermediary which basically takes money from one side and gives money on the other side to businesses. It takes money from individuals and passes on that money to businesses. And as you can understand, your money becomes productive when it reaches a bank, right? If your money is lying as cash in your home, that money is not working at all, right? But banks basically make your money work so that they can actually offer you some interest rates, right? Now let's talk about RBI, or what is the central bank. So every country has a central bank, right? Every country has, so in India, you call it RBI, Reserve Bank of India. In US, you call it Fed. So every country has a central bank. So what is the job of central bank is, first thing is that it issues currency notes. In fact, I don't know if some of you might know that Indian currency notes are primarily printed in two cities, in Mysore and Calcutta. Those are the two places where Indian currency notes are printed. So managing those currency notes, making sure that fake currency notes are not in circulation. Those are the type of jobs which RBI does. It manages policies for the banks. So in India, one of the good things is that banking is a very, very regulated industry. So there are a strict set of rules which RBI defines for every bank, right? Which is, so for example, just to give you an example, there is a concept of what is called as cash reserve ratio, CRR. Cash reserve ratio is nothing but to explain simply that, let's say if a bank gets, let's say different people make their deposit and bank gets 100 rupees of deposits. Now bank has to give out loans to businesses. And let's say bank gives out money for, out of that 100, it gives out loan for the entire 100 rupee. Now the problem will be that, let's say tomorrow you go and try to take 1 rupee out for your usage. Now bank doesn't have money. So there's something called as cash reserve ratio, which will, RBI will make rule that if you have 100 rupee deposit, you still have to keep, let's say 10 rupees available at every time. You can't give loan more than 90 rupees. Right. So these are the kind of policies I'm just trying to explain with a simple example. But these are the kind of policies which are basically managed by RBI. So it basically supervises all the banks, tries to check whether health of a bank is good, bad. If it's going bad, they will take corresponding action. Like you might have seen Yes Bank, for example, right? Yes Bank was going through trouble. Then RBI basically changed the director of the bank and then asked some other entities to fund money. So these are the kind of And then I think UPI, NEFT, that is something which you might have used. So RBI also helps in setting those rules. If how can I transfer money from one account to another? In fact, Indian UPI system is one of the most advanced system in this space. So these are the primary jobs of so RBI governor position actually is a very important position in our economy, because all these rules are made by RBI. Now let's have a little bit of music to explain you something interesting. तो खूब ही कमात है, महंगाई डायन खाया जात है। Okay, I am sure most of you have heard this song, and just to translate it very loosely, what he's saying is that my whatever husband earns a lot, but inflation just eats it up, and that's the reality of life. One thing you need to understand very clear is okay. So one thing you need to understand is that there's something called as inflation. Your money does not have the same value with time. Your money keeps losing value, right? So I still remember in 2000, the gold was 4,400 rupees for 10 grams. Now it is around 50,000 for 10 grams. So gold has appreciated more than 10 times in last 20 years, right? I still remember, like in Bangalore, at least for me to go from my home to a railway station, it used to cost me 35 rupees. Now it will probably cost me 200 to 50 rupees, right? So cost of all the things which you are buying, products you are buying, as well as services you are buying, is something which keeps increasing. And what happens due to that is that if you keep money as it is, so if you get 10,000 rupees and you keep it in a safe in your home, the 10,000 rupees will become 5,000 rupees in few years, right? So always understand that whenever you have money, you have to grow it faster than inflation. In India, inflation is roughly 4 to 6%. So any instrument which is giving you less than 4 to 6% returns is actually making you poor every day. Okay. And we will look at how we can come out of that. So one thing you should understand very clearly is that not understanding money is not an option for you, because unless you are ready to become poor day by day, right? So unless you invest the money in the correct instruments, your money will keep losing value, and you'll reach a point where you might have some money, but that might not be good enough for you to sustain your lifestyle or pay for education of your kids or pay for health expenses or anything else, right? Any questions so far? I'm just checking the chat as well. If anybody has questions, feel free to either speak or put it on chat. Okay, so let's now first talk about what is a share, stock, or equity. These are the three words which are used interchangeably. Share or a stock is basically a very small part of it. It's the ownership of the company. So let's say you start a restaurant. One option is that, let's take the same example, that let's say you start a restaurant where you need 50 lakh rupees, right? So one option is that you invest your own 50 lakh rupees and you basically own the entire share. But let's say if you don't have 50 lakh rupees, there's another option. What you can do is, let's say you need amount of 50 lakh, you create 10 rupees shares, 5 lakh shares, and you sell it to people, and people buy that share for, let's say, 10 rupees each. And now you get that 50 lakh amount, and you can start the restaurant. Now the only issue is that your restaurant is not owned by just you, it is also owned by all these people who have bought your share. So share is nothing but part ownership of a company. So if you buy a Reliance share, it means that you are partly owner of Reliance as a company. Although your percentages might be 0.00001% because Reliance is a very big company. But buying stocks is all about feeling like that I'm owner of this company, and then understanding that, is this company going in the right direction? Is this something what company is doing is the right thing from a owner perspective? So we should always look at stocks as owning a company. Although the percentage might be small, but you are still owner of the company. Now, how do you make money from stock? So let's take again a very simple example. Let's say this restaurant stock, I bought this stock for 10 rupees, right? And let's say it was a South Indian restaurant selling dosas in South Bangalore. Okay. Now what happens is that suddenly Bangalore people realize that they want to eat a lot more dosas. Okay, I bought stock for 10 rupees. Okay. Now what can happen is somebody else can view that this company is going to do very good, and I am ready to buy the 10 rupees stock for 12 rupees. And now let's say you need money for something, you sell your 10 rupees stock for 12 rupees. So you have made 20% or 2 rupees on that stock, right? So that is the way stock prices increase. And let's say that company starts 3 more branches. Let's say I start 3 more branches of the restaurant, my business grows, and I'm able to reinvest that money and start more branches. My business will grow, my revenue will grow, my profits will grow, right? So that is how value of stock goes up when company does well. Like I used to work with Infosys long time back. Infosys was a very small company way back in 90s, but now Infosys is one of the largest software companies across the world, right? So obviously the stock of the company, because you're a part owner of the company has grown. That is why value of your stock also has grown, right? That is one way in which you get money from a stock, that value of your stock appreciates because somebody else thinks this company is going to do better in future. Second way in which you can make money is that company might share its profits with you. So company makes, let's say, a restaurant where you have this 10 rupees share. These guys start making, let's say, 5 lakh every month. So in a year, they make 60 lakhs and they decide that 30 lakhs we will invest in the next restaurant, but 30 lakh we will give it back to our share owners. Okay. So let's say there are 5 lakh share owners. The restaurant decides to give back 30 lakh. So everybody gets 6 rupees each, right? So that is another way in which your shares can basically, you can get money out of, your shares, right? So it is called as dividend. Company sharing its profit is basically called as dividend from a share. Okay. So these are the primary 2 ways in which you can make money out of shares. Shares, stocks, equity, both these 3 words mean pretty much the same and will be used interchangeably. Hope this is clear. I'll just move to the next slide. Please feel free to ask questions. Now let's talk about another product which I think most of you are quite used to seeing this. There's a fixed deposit, or also called as bonds. So when you give, let's say, 1,000 rupees to a bank and buy a fixed deposit, what you tell the bank is that I'm giving you this 1,000 rupees for a fixed amount of time, which is like, let's say, 3 years, and the bank will give you a, let's say, 6% interest on that, right? So in effect, what you're doing is you are actually giving a loan to your bank, right? And bank is paying you some interest on that loan, right? And in this case, so let's again go to restaurant example. So restaurant, let's say the restaurant owner didn't want to let his ownership go. So what he does is he issues bonds. Let's say he issues bonds, give 5%. So now in that case, people can buy those bonds and primarily with the intention of getting that interest on that, right? And the difference between bonds and stocks is that there is no ownership associated with it, unlike stocks, right? And it's the same thing which banks do with you, right? Banks basically give you fixed deposits or bonds where they tell you that, yeah, if you keep this for 3 years, you will make 6.5%. Keep it for 1 year, then you will get 5.5%, something like that, right? Each one of you. But fixed deposit or bonds are nothing but just a loan, which are, you know, which are given by, you uh, to another entity, and understand that you buy a fixed deposit from your bank. But similar fixed deposits are issued by a lot of companies also. Okay, so it's not just banks who give fixed deposit. There are companies like Bajaj who give fixed. There's a company called Shriram Transport which actually gives fixed deposit. So fixed deposits can be issued by anything, any business entity. Okay, and one effect of fixed deposit is that your money is locked for that period. You can't take out your money in the middle. So if you do a 3-year fixed deposit, either you can't take out the money or there will be some penalty if you take out the money. And by the way, one more thing is that fixed deposits are given by government also, right? Like you have a national savings certificate. That is nothing but just a fixed deposit. Governments also wants money, right? Government wants money to either build infrastructure for its expenses. So they also take loan from public to make those things happen. Now let's understand what is a mutual fund. Okay, so we talked about stocks. Now let's understand what is a mutual. We talked about bonds. So what happens is that, for example, in our market, we'll have around 5,000-6,000 companies which are there, right? Which are there in the stock market. Okay, number of companies is much larger, but some of the companies are private companies and not on the stock market. So in that case, what happens is that it becomes very difficult for you to figure out which is the right stock for me to invest, which is when should I buy, when should I sell. So what you do is that there are companies called mutual fund companies, which basically make a basket of stocks for you. So let's take an example. Let's say we are talking about Mumbai. Okay, so somebody will make a basket of an Italian restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, and a South Indian restaurant, and say, buy this basket of stocks. And my belief is that this basket of stocks will do good in next 3 years, right? So mutual fund is nothing but just a basket of stocks, and it works the same thing in bonds also, right? I can create a basket of bonds also, bonds or fixed deposits as well. So mutual funds are of, I would say, 3 kinds broadly. One is there are stock-based or equity-based mutual funds. Then there are bond-based mutual funds, which are also called as debt mutual funds. And then there are something called as a hybrid mutual fund, which will have a combination of both stocks and bonds. Okay. Another advantage mutual fund gives you is that it enables you to invest in very small amount. So let us say that if some company's stock costs, let's say Reliance stock is right now at 2,500 rupees, right? Or let's say Reddy's Lab is around 4,000 rupees. Now, if you have to buy a stock, you have to pay 4,000 rupees for a Reddy's Lab. But what you can do in mutual fund is that, let's say you have only 100 rupees. They will basically collect 100 rupees from multiple people and then add it up and then buy a Reddy's Lab stock, right? So that way in mutual funds, the starting point for your investment can be as low as 100 rupees or 500 rupees. Okay, so, and then other part is that mutual fund is a very well-regulated industry. So it is very tough for a mutual fund company to run away with your money, because there are a lot of checks and balances. There is a mutual fund association, there is a SEBI which controls it. So there are tons of government agencies which control the mutual fund industry. So mutual fund is a great way for almost all the investors to get started with their investment journey. Because and what mutual funds will do is they will hire a professional. So they will hire an investment officer whose job is to analyze industries, to analyze companies, right? Which restaurant, there might be 20 South Indian restaurants in your city, but which restaurant is likely to do better, right? So somebody has to look at that. Is their food hygienic? Is their food uses the right ingredients? Is their service quick? Right? So these are the kind of business analysis which needs to be done. So there are dedicated people in mutual funds who are doing this kind of analysis for every business. And I am giving restaurant as an example. These things can become super complicated in different industries. For example, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have sugar industry in India, right? Now sugar industry produces ethanol is a byproduct, and now government is trying to sell petrol which has a lot of ethanol mix. Now your government emphasis on selling ethanol blended petrol is resulting in stock prices of sugar companies going up, right? And government is doing to reduce its you know the amount of money they have to pay for importing petroleum, and it's supposed to be more environment friendly as well. So now you can understand that some of this analysis can become super complicated. You have to understand what is ethanol and how does it help a petrol. So the best thing is that instead of trying to understand all this complexity, you basically hire a person for you to manage your money, and that guy understands all this different industry complexity, and you can just put in your money and watch it grow. Plus, obviously, mutual funds enable you to start at a very low price. And since they invest in different businesses, it also lowers your risk as well. Because if you invest in an individual stock and that company tanks, you will typically lose all your money, right? But now it's a bouquet of companies, then that obviously makes sure that your probability of losing money also becomes lesser. Now let's understand a little bit what is a stock market or exchange. I'm sure a lot of you might have seen that Scam 1992 web series, Harshad Mehta web series, where you might have seen that there is a big hall and people are shouting at each other, right? That used to be the stock market at some point. So what happens with the shares is that one thing is what you might have heard as a IPO or initial public offering. So initially companies basically give a public offering where they sell their stocks directly to you, right? So let's say there was an IPO of Zomato. So Zomato basically gave its stocks directly to you, right? You directly bought it from the government, from the company, right? But now what happens after that is that different people want to buy that stock. That is something which happens in a market which is called as a stock market. So just like it's vegetable market is where vegetables are sold, stock market is where stocks are sold and bought, right? And in a typical market, what happens is that you go to a market, the seller tells a price, right? Your vegetable seller will say that, yeah, potatoes are 10 rupees kg. And then you decide, yeah, should I buy it or not? You will either bargain and say, no, give me 8 rupees kg. That's exactly what a stock market is. It's just that instead of vegetables, you are selling stocks, and it is exchanging hands between different people. There's a buyer, there's a seller. Earlier it used to happen manually. That's why you used to see that big hall where people are shouting at each other. But now what has happened is that all this has become totally automated. There's a lot of software which runs. So what happens is that you tell a stock exchange. So let's say you bought a stock at 10 rupees. You will tell the exchange, I am ready to sell 5 stocks at 13 rupees. And let's say now the exchange, somebody wants to buy that stock, and he says, I want to buy this stock at 30. It will just connect both of you, right? So the idea of exchange is very simple. Stock exchange or stock market is very simple. It is just like any other market. The commodity which is bought and sold here is stocks of companies.
It must be.
So just one more thing I wanted to make it clear here is that public offering, when it is there, that is something where company sells stocks to you. After that, stocks are all about selling to each other as individuals. There is no company involvement after that. Yeah, so the same thing which I was explaining, that initial public offering happens from the company. Otherwise, it goes to a stock market and people exchange stocks with each other. Company is out of the equation after that. Now let's talk a little bit about Nifty 50 and Sensex. These are buzzwords you might have heard in different places. So what happens is that in a market, you have a large number of stocks, like 5,000-6,000 stocks. If you want to understand that stock market is going up or going down, it is a very, very tough answer, right? Because some companies might go up, some companies might go down. So what is done in stock market is they choose a smaller set of companies, So like Nifty 50 has 50 stocks, and these are the largest companies of our stock market. So this will include companies like Infosys, Reliance, Axis Bank. These are like the big companies, ICICI Bank, right? These are the biggest companies in our country. So now what they will do is, based on their stock prices, they will generate an index. Index is nothing but, just take an example. Let's say they multiply price of Reliance by some factor, plus they do the same thing with Infosys, same thing with Axis Bank, and they finally arrive at a number. So what happens is, now this number is dependent on price of these 50 companies. And if this 50 companies go up, your Nifty 50 will go up. If these 50 companies prices go down, your Nifty 50 will go down. So the concept of Nifty 50 or Sensex is very simple. It is primarily weighted average, weighted index, where different companies, the top 50 biggest companies of India. So it represents the stock health of 50 biggest companies in India. Sensex is a very similar index, but it has 30 stocks in it. Okay. So that is what, so normally when you look at stock market, instead of looking at those 5,000 stocks, people will just look at the value of Nifty 50 or Sensex and sort of make a call that stock market is high or it is low, it is doing well or not. So those kind of calls can be made by looking at these Nifty 50 or Sensex. Now let's talk about another concept which is very useful for a lot of people, which is called as a systematic investment plan, or a SIP. So the idea of SIP is very simple, that you do a fixed amount of investment at regular intervals. So let's say you decide that, let's say my salary comes on 1st of every month. What I'll do is 5th of every month, I will invest 5,000 rupees in one of these things, right? One of the mutual fund, right? So you can set up these automated systems. These are the kind of things which reduce your time taken to, and you can totally automate this. Nowadays, everything has become so easy and everything is online, that it is very easy for you to automate this entire process of taking money out of your account, and investment happens and your portfolio keeps building on its own. The biggest advantage of doing a SIP is it actually builds habit. Look, finally, personal finance is also about building the right habits. It is just like you teach your kids to brush teeth or whatever, right? It's very similar to that. So SIP will enable you to do regular investments at regular intervals, and that will make sure that you are able to build a good enough corpus in the longer run. And obviously, the earlier you start, better it is for you. Now let's talk a little bit about some slightly, I would say, not controversial, but slightly confusing topics. And I'm talking about a lot of these topics from talking to a lot of couples, who have had problems due to different reasons. So it's a good idea. I think what happens in a lot of our relationships is that we don't want to talk about money. It's like a taboo topic in a lot of cases, right? But let's try to understand what is the right way to manage couple finances, right? If you are a couple, how you should manage finances. First thing is, obviously you should discuss finance related issue. Both the partners should understand where and this is a common problem I've seen people who don't know, who have no idea about finances of their spouse. So in the unfortunate case, one partner is not there. They have no idea where all that person invested and how to get that money back. And it becomes a big problem for a lot of people. So one thing is that you should discuss finance related issues. Another way to do is that actually have a separate account for your salary. So what happens is that now we have a lot of families where both husband and wife are earning, right? So one good way to manage that is that both of them should actually have a separate account for their salaries, and then keep a joint family account where each one of them contributes, right? So let's say a husband earns 1 lakh and wife earns 1 lakh. So what you do is, let's say your monthly expense is 1 lakh. So what you do is you keep your 1 lakh, you get in a different account. Then you have a joint account where both of you contribute 50,000. right? And another concept which is used quite a lot is that people should, when you are a couple, you should contribute in your ratio of your salaries, right? So let's say a husband earns 1 lakh and a wife earns 2 lakh. Then what should happen is that husband should contribute 33,000, and let's say expenses 1 lakh. So husband should contribute 33,000 and the wife should contribute 66,000, right? It's in the ratio of their salaries. So that way, what happens is that each one has individual ownership of money as well. Plus, there is a family account to take care of, and people, I have seen people getting into, and I'm talking about real life scenarios. I know somebody who unfortunately had to sort of, they got separated. And when they were together, what was happening was husband was doing all the saving, wife was doing all the expenses. And when they had to separate out, wife had actually a zero bank account and husband had a very, very huge amount in his bank. Now that girl is in a mess because she actually is at zero money, right? She's pretty much starting from scratch. And now there's no way for them to account that I spent money on the household groceries or something like that. So managing this in a way where you have two separate accounts, one for family, one for you personally, that is one of the ways to avoid such scenarios. By the way, I'm not trying to, don't take it in a negative form. My hope is nobody has to separate out or nobody has gets into those situations. But just from a finance perspective, it makes sense to structure it that way. Yeah, so as I was talking about, contribute to family expenses account in ratio of your salary. If wife is earning more, she should contribute more. If husband is earning more, then he should contribute more. You should review your financial status regularly so you understand what is doing well, what is not doing well. So that is again something you should do it as a family or as a couple. This is one of the problems which I see as one big problem in India. And a lot of spouses actually don't maintain a list of all the assets. So they would have bought, let's say, a house somewhere, or they might have put some fixed deposits. And if in the unfortunate case one of the spouse passes away, the other spouses might be rich but actually poor, right? So you might have a lot of assets, you might have a fixed deposit which can, and this I have seen in real life scenario happening very often, right? So it's a good idea for you to structure your, so few things which you should always do is that document all your assets and share it with somebody. It might be your spouse or it might be some friend you have, right? So you document all assets and then you set all nominations, right? So that it's very easy for the nominee to get the amount which you anyway saved for them, right? Otherwise your nominee will struggle to get that money out. And nowadays you can do nominations in almost all financial instruments. Sharing passwords is another thing which you should do. Best option is just make a shared Excel sheet. And now most of the things are online, right? So you can actually share those ID passwords in a shared Excel sheet. That way it is safe, as well as in your absence, somebody else can operate those accounts as well, right? So yeah, bottom line is your earnings should not be your family money. I think especially important for a lot of women, right? You should not look at it. You also need money for yourself, and you should have some money which is in your name, which is something which is under your direct control. It should not happen that all the money which is earned by you or which you have becomes family money. And then obviously you have an option, like it's your money, you have the option to spend it on your family. But just from a structure perspective, it is better to have some money in your name as well, especially if you're earning. Okay, now let's talk about another topic which is very common, especially in women. When women go through pregnancy, a career break is something which happens with almost every woman, right? So handling career breaks is another thing which I think people should understand well. So there can be two types of career breaks. There can be planned career breaks, and there can be unplanned career breaks, right? So planned career breaks are pregnancy, and unplanned can be, spouse changing jobs, or there can be a job loss, or there can be a family situation as well, right? Sometimes you can have some family member falling ill and you want to make sure that you support them. So there can be different scenarios in which you can have career breaks. Now, career breaks are pretty much like, you can call it a temporary retirement, right? So if possible, plan for them in advance, understand what will be the duration of your career break, what is the type of amount you will need during the, so try to make budgets for your career breaks. What will be my possible expenses during the career break? How long this career break will last? And other thing is, you can actually use this career breaks to enhance your earning capability as well. You might acquire a new skill, you might learn digital marketing, you might learn editing images. Maybe that's a skill which can help you in earning more money in the longer run, right? So whenever you're planning for career breaks, you should also understand, can you learn new skills during that career break? And always make sure that you make re-entry plan. If at some point you were earning and you want to sort of re-enter your job, make sure that you make those re-entry plans also in time. So they are pretty much like temporary retirement, and we'll talk a little bit about retirement. But handling career breaks obviously requires, another thing which I would like to point out is, this is again talking to a lot of friends, that sometimes a lot of people feel very insecure during career breaks. Okay, because their earning becomes zero and they feel, but let's say if you are in a career break where your earning is zero, but your money is still making money for you, and you have a decent amount of money in your bank account, I'm sure you will feel much more confident and relaxed with that setup. And this is something which I have seen with a lot of women friends, that when they have a career break, they just feel depressed that I'm not earning anymore, I have zero net worth at this point. So it's a good idea for plan for them in advance. Yeah, so the best thing is you build a career break fund, right? Especially for women, what happens is that career breaks are bound to happen because of biological reasons. So you make sure that before that you build a fund where which can make you feel independent using that during that career break as well. And managing investment is something you can continue during your career break. My assumption is that unless it's some severe illness or something, most of us can probably figure out some time to manage investments, and it will make you feel productive and make you feel good that I'm doing something, I'm managing money, I'm making some money out of it, right? So even when I'm not in a full-time job or full-time work, so it can actually help you a lot if you manage investments during your career break. Now let's talk a little bit about uh, these accidents happen, right? Corona has shown us the unpredictability of life, right? People who are perfectly healthy have gone, and so it is a good idea to plan. What if you are gone? You don't want your loved ones to suffer just because you are gone, right? You want to make sure that they are taken care of even if you are gone, right? So few of the things which are important are, share your passwords and share in a secure way. Don't write it on a refrigerator, on a piece of paper, stick on a refrigerator, but you can share them in a secure way. Do account nomination. Other thing is important to understand is, you should buy term insurance. So let me just demystify a little bit thing about insurance. Uh, so you might come across a lot of insurance policies which basically give you money back, right? These are money back policies or endowment policies. Most of those policies actually give you a very bad returns. Okay. But term insurance is something where you can pay a small amount and you can get a large amount of insurance. Only thing is that amount will never come back to you. And I'll show you with some examples that how pure term insurance is much better than buying anything else. Okay. It's a good idea to buy it early because your premiums might be less. If you buy it later, obviously it becomes costly. And another thing which you should understand in term insurance is that you should buy insurance only if you have dependents on you. So let us say if you are a non-earning member of your family, you actually don't need term insurance, right? Because nobody is dependent on your salary, because you don't have a salary, right? So what you should understand is, and then again, another planning which you should do is, so for example, let's say you get married and you get kids when you are around 30 years, right? So by the time you are 55 years, your kids will be roughly 25 years, right? Now what happens is that at 25 years, most of the kids become financially independent, right? And let's assume that your parents are not dependent on you, right? So then you don't really need a term insurance at that point, right? Because nobody is dependent on your earnings, right? So it's a good idea for you to understand how much term insurance I need, when do I need it, till what age do I need it, right? And make your insurance, look, insurance is one of the products which is sold very badly in our society. Okay. But you need to understand what are your insurance requirements and do you really require it? And other thing is, buy only pure term insurance. Don't get into these policies which try to give money back to you. And I'll explain you with few examples why you shouldn't do that. So let's take this real example, real data. And this is something which you can almost say that happened to me because I started my career in 1995 exactly. So let's say if you are paying an insurance premium of 60,000 rupees per year, right? 5,000 per month, right? So if you had invested that money in a LIC policy called Jeevan Ankur or Amudha Surbi, you'll probably have around, after 20 years, around 29 lakhs. It's roughly 20 to 30 lakhs is the amount which you will have, right? But let's say if the same amount of money you had invested in a simple HDFC equity fund, you will be sitting on something like 1.95 crores or 2.12 crores if you invested in this. So you understand that the amount of delta which gets created here is not like few thousand rupees or few lakh rupees. This is probably, most of us would have lost maybe few crores if we bought a wrong insurance policy at a point. Look, what you can always do is, let's say you were putting 60,000 rupees here. Let's say you had 60,000 rupees available here. What you could have done is buy pure term insurance for 10,000 rupees out of that and put 50,000 rupees. Even then, if you will compare these two numbers, it will probably come more than a crore, right? So one thing you should understand clearly is a wrong financial decision, a wrong product you buy. If you buy a wrong phone, it will cost you only 20,000 rupees. The phone stops working, right? But a wrong financial product cost might be probably a crore, right? So that is something which you should clearly understand, that buying the right, and financial products are wrongly sold by everybody. One of the biggest examples is our bank relationship managers. They are one of the worst guys to sell products to you, because what they do is they will sell you products which are good for them in terms of commission and all. They are not trying to give you a product which is good for you, right? So if a bank relationship manager calls you and says nice things to you that, sir, you are a very nice customer and I want to, he's just trying to take money out of your pocket, right? So it's very important for you to understand what is a good financial product versus what is a bad financial product. And we'll talk a little bit about how do we analyze that as well. Now, other things which are again very important is that you should plan for health emergency. You should make sure that health costs have been going up for a very long time. So you should certainly buy appropriate health insurance cover. If your company covers it, well and good. But if you need extra insurance, you should certainly buy. Another thing which you should always do is build an emergency fund, right? Means like I was talking to the cab driver today and he said in COVID time, I really didn't have anything left with me because I didn't plan for that emergency. So typically 6 to 12 months of your expenses is something which you should keep it available to you just in case of any emergency. That money is available to you. You can keep it in liquid funds and fixed deposits, which can be broken easily. So these are the kind of things you can use, but you should always build a 6 to 12 month of emergency fund for you. Now let's understand a little bit about, so this is a slightly mathematical concept, but I'll try to explain you in simplest way possible. So what happens with a lot of our financial instruments is, look, we are taught all simple interest in our schools, right? That if 100 rupees becomes 110 rupees next year, you get 10% returns. But what happens in a lot of financial products is that you pay money in different installments at different years, right? So let's take example of this, given in this slide, right? So let's say on 1st Jan 2008, I give 100 rupees. 1st Jan 2009, I give 100 rupees. I keep doing that for 10 years. And now on 1st Jan 2018, let's say bank says I'll give you 1500 rupees. So I have paid 1000 rupees to the bank. Bank is giving me 1500. The bank representative will call you and say, sir, you are going to get 50% returns. But that is a wrong assumption. You are not getting 50% return, because one amount of money has spent 11 years in the system. Another amount of money has so all the money you have given have spent different amount of time, right? So there is a very simple calculation called XIRR, which you can do very simply in Excel. So let me just show it to you how to do that. So this is a simple way to do this. So what you do is that you open a Google Excel or a normal Microsoft Excel. Here you put the date where money goes out of your pocket. And any money which goes out of your pocket is written in minus. And then you write the date where you get this money, and the money which you get into your pocket is written in plus. And then what you do is you use this simple Excel formula in which you give this equal to XIRR, and on one side you put all the amounts, and on the second side you put all the dates. That's it. So now what this tells me is that my returns on this is actually 7.25%, not 50%, right? So this is one easy framework for you to calculate returns of any financial instrument. So if an insurance agent comes to you and says, this is a money back policy, and in the 4th year you will get 20,000 back, just ask him to make this Excel sheet and show it to you what is the XIRR value. And I can bet that will open your eyes in terms of if this is a good financial instrument, should I buy this insurance or not? It will just open up your mind to that. Any questions on this? Nope. Just try it out in Excel. This is very simple calculation, equal to XIRR. You can play around with it. Now let's talk a little bit broad tips which are there for personal finance. Understand your assets and liabilities. The simple definition of assets and liabilities is anything which gives you money is an asset. So let's say if you have a home which is giving you rental income, that is an asset. But the same home will become a liability if you are paying huge amount of, let's say, loan repay back on that, right? So that will become a liability. So anything which takes money out of your pocket is a liability. So understand that what are the assets you have, what are the liabilities you have. You should maybe make a record of it. Understand liquidity. This is another interesting thing, finance term, which you should understand is, look, there are, so for example, let's say you own a house. Okay, your house is worth 1 crore. And let's say you need 5 lakh rupees for some medical emergency. Now, the problem with that is that you can't sell just the bathroom of the house and make 5 lakh out of it, right? You will have to sell the entire house, and selling a house is a complicated enough task. So understand that whatever your investments are, how easily they can be converted to cash if you need it, right? So that you should understand on whatever you own, that is this a liquid asset which can be easily converted to cash, or is it a very difficult to convert to cash, right? Otherwise, what can happen is that you might be rich. Let's say I have a property which I am not able to sell. So theoretically, I am rich because that property is maybe worth 50 lakhs. But that 50 lakh I'm not able to get. So it's actually worthless for me. If I have a health emergency and I need 5 lakh and that property is not able to satisfy it, obviously it's useless for me. Also understand what is the active income versus passive income. Active income is something for which you are actively working. So if you're going to office 9 to 5, working there as a marketing manager or something else, that is your active income. Passive income is which is working even when you are sleeping. So here the whole goal is to try to generate passive income for you. Usage of credit card is a very, it's a double-edged sword. If you think that you can use credit cards without increasing your purchases, use it, otherwise don't use it. Okay, so if you think that you end up buying too many things, if I have a credit card which has a huge limit, please discontinue your credit card, right? But if you are clear that yeah, you get the points back on credit card, and my shopping habit don't change because of credit card, and but never default on a credit card, because credit card interest rates are as high as 30%, 36%. So never default on a credit card. Never buy things on a credit card just because you can, and then you pay for it via the interest. Tax planning should always be done in advance. A lot of us have this habit of waking up in March and thinking about what should I invest in, but that obviously should be done much in advance throughout the year. Emergency fund we talked about. Making financial goals is something very important, and we'll talk a little bit about this. Making a savings plan is again a very important concept which all of us should be aware of. And bad debt like credit card debt, those kind of personal loans, all those are bad debts. House loan is probably okay, but all other debts which are high interest debt, high interest loans you have taken, those are the loans you should certainly get rid of. And then you should track your net worth. Its simple idea is that you put a sort of a monthly checkpoint or a weekly checkpoint, whatever works for you, and list out all your assets in an Excel sheet and sort of add them up and see how much am I worth right now, right? So you can track your net worth very easily. Savings account is a product you should not use much. Having too much money in savings account, as I was telling you, that savings account give you 2.5%, 3%. Inflation in India is 5-6%. So effectively in savings account, you are losing at the rate of 3% per year, right? So you should never keep large amount of money in savings account. The only thing which is required for your, paying a fees or some other thing, you should keep very small amounts in savings accounts. ULIP, endowment, money back policies are things which you should stay away from. We talked in detail about it. Now, how much should I save? This is a standard question a lot of people ask. I think the broad thumb rule is that 50%, and these are numbers which obviously can change based on your financial situation, but at least 20% of your money, so 50% goes to your needs, which is like rent, food, grocery, all that stuff. 30% on wants, which might be a costly phone or might be costly eating in an expensive restaurant. But at least 20% of your money is something which you should be saving. And obviously, this is something which you can increase as you go along. But 20% saving is something which certainly should be your starting point. Now let's talk about another thing which a lot of people get confused with, and I've seen tons of, especially women getting confused with this. Is gold jewelry an investment? As per data, Indian women own 11% of world gold. I'm not talking about Indian government at all here. It's just Indian household women own 11% of world gold. And gold is a dead asset, because gold sitting in your locker room is not doing anything, right? Even if you deposit it in bank, that money is doing something, because the bank will loan it to a restaurant owner, and restaurant owner will create jobs and all that will happen, right? But money sitting in your bank, in your locker, actually is a gold jewelry lying, is not really doing anything. And always understand, jewelry is not an investment. A lot of people confuse jewelry as investment. If you are using the jewelry, if you are wearing it, this is just like any other thing you own, right? This is like a soap, oil, or whatever you own, right? This is not something, you shouldn't count it as investment. This is a asset which you are using for day-to-day thing, right? Jewelry is a bad way of investing in gold anyway, because there are making charges, and then Storage of jewelry has its own challenges, right? So gold is a very non-productive asset. The best way to invest in gold is a scheme called sovereign gold bond by the government. What it does is that you can buy it. Government has at least, I think, 6 or 7 tranches of it every year, and the government gives you extra 2.5% also on this. And it's a digital gold, so there's nothing you have to store. You can store it all digitally. So if you want to invest in gold, use sovereign gold bonds. Never invest in physical gold from an investment perspective. If you want to wear it to parties, obviously you can't wear digital gold to parties, but always use sovereign gold bonds as the primary gold investment mechanism. So these are the various asset classes which are there, which are liquid as well as illiquid. I think we have talked a little bit about each one of them. I think the only things which I haven't talked about is things like REIT and InvIT. These are again investment classes where, so for example, instead of buying a property, you can invest in something called as REIT, REIT, which is basically a real estate investment trust. What they do is that they form a trust and invest in real estate on your behalf. And it again enables you to, right now, if you buy a flat, you probably need to pay 1 crore. Here you can invest as small as 10,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees, and that finally goes as a real estate investment. So these are, better ways to invest in real estate. You don't have to bother about taxation. You don't have to bother about that builder was bad. All that stuff is taken by care by these trusts. So real estate investment trust and InvIT is the same thing, but it invests in infrastructure projects. Digital assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, I always advise people to stay away from them. Nowadays, it's easier to convince because their prices have gone down drastically. And even if you want to buy them, buy in very small quantities. Don't look at them. Don't sell your home and buy a Bitcoin. So yeah, this is an example of how you make your financial goals. So whenever you make financial goals, what you do is that, so for example, buy a car. Maybe you need a car in 5 years. Amount is 10 lakhs. But understand that there is another aspect of goals, financial goals, is that some goals can be negotiable, some goals can be non-negotiable. So car is something, if 5 becomes 6 years, you can probably still manage with your older car, right? But let's say kids education. So let's say your kid is done with his 12th. You can't tell your kid that, wait for 2 years. I don't have money to pay for your education, right? So that is a non-negotiable goal. Or retirement is a non-negotiable goal. Your company has a policy that when you turn 60, you have to retire. You can't negotiate with the company, no, make it 65 for me, right? So always understand, for all your financial goals, make a list of these financial goals where you understand what is the goal, what is the duration, what is the amount associated with it, and what is the negotiability of the goal. So how to invest, how to build your portfolio? One formula is very simple, what is called as a 100 minus age formula. So if you are a 25-year-old, what you do is you understand that equity or stocks are a riskier asset class, right? So, and they fluctuate a lot. They'll fluctuate, their prices in the longer run will go up, but in the shorter run, they might go down as well. So when you try to build a portfolio, what you do is that when you are younger, you can invest in more riskier asset classes, but as you age, you keep reducing your risky asset class and keep increasing your, so that is why this 100 minus age formula, what it does is that initially in your career, it gives you a higher equity weightage, and later on it keeps reducing that as you age. This is again another way of investing, which is that based on your style of investing or your understanding of the market, you can actually have a different ratio in which you buy equity, debt, gold. And equity again is split into domestic stocks versus international stocks. So this is again different types of ratios you can have based on the type of investor you are. Like I might be aggressive investor because I follow the stock market very closely, and Somebody else might be a more conservative, investor. So based on that, you should understand how you build your portfolio. Now let's understand a little bit about compounding. Uh, Compound interest is something which all of us study in school, but let me hit you with an example and you will understand how much difference it can make. So one thing is that easy way to calculate compounding is that there's a magic number of 72. So let's say mutual funds here give you 15% return rate. You divide 72 by 15, which is 4.8. Your money will double in 4.8 years. Okay, there's a simple way to shortcut to calculate this. So let's take this example. Like mutual funds will typically give you 15% returns. Your money will double in 4.8 years. A fixed deposit will typically give you 6 years and your money will double in 72 by 6, which is 12 years. Savings bank account gives you 3 years. Your money will double in 24 years. So just imagine between these two instruments, a mutual fund and a savings bank account, you will take 20 years extra to double your amount, right? So it's a good idea to understand this magic number 72 to understand how your money is going to compound or double as the time goes. And let's look at some of these calculators which are there for me to just explain how much money can you. So one thing is, let's just try to calculate how much money can you make if you invest for a long enough duration. So let's take a simple example. Let's say my monthly investment amount is 5,000 rupees. Okay. And let's make an assumption that I can grow this amount by 5% every year. Okay. And a typical expectation on rate is 12%. And this is easy to get. And I do this for 20 years. Okay. And here we are assuming all very small amounts. Okay. So now this is an investment setup of this will make you a corpus of around 65 lakhs, right? Where your actual investment is only 19.83 lakhs and your earnings are 45 lakhs, right? And we are talking about fairly small amounts here, right? So let's say if I can grow this by, instead of 5%, let's say I can grow this by 10%. Now my amounts have become almost close to 1 crore, right? So if you invest systematically for a longer duration, let's say if I increase number of years to 30, you are a young person and probably now even with this small investment, my amount is at 4.17 crores, right? So what you should understand is that regular investments at regular time can help you in building significant wealth over time, right? 4 crores is something which probably might be worth a lot. Even if it's 30 years later, maybe it's worth relatively lesser. But as you see here that it is growing faster than inflation, it is still might become a significant amount of money for you. Tax planning is another topic which you should understand. Don't get obsessed with saving all the taxes. It is fine to earn more and pay more taxes. Do it throughout the year. So there is a type of mutual fund called ELSS or equity linked savings scheme. These mutual funds have a 3-year lock-in period, means within 3 years you can't sell, but these are the best way for you to save tax. And there is another product by government called NPS, National Pension Scheme. That is another product you can use to get extra deduction of 50,000 when you are trying to save tax. But tax planning is something which you should do early and use equity linked ELSS mutual funds for doing that. Retirement is the reality of almost all of us. And I keep telling people that don't think of your kids as your retirement plan. All of us should take care of our own retirement. And kids shouldn't think of parents as their emergency fund, and parents shouldn't think of kids as their retirement plan. So start early. The earlier you start, I was showing in the other slide, right? How you can significantly build a bigger corpus if you start early. Understand what your requirements might be. And with life expectancy going up, you are going to spend 25-30 years where you are not earning. And then there is something called as 3 bucket strategy, which you can use for retirement. So what happens is that, and this is something which is very common, which happens is that when people retire, they don't know, let's say they get some money from their provident fund or some other place, they don't know how to structure it. So one of the way to structure it is what they call as 3 bucket approach. So what you do is that you take the first bucket where your next 2-3 year requirements, you put it there, and these are the things which you will put in more safer instruments, which will be typically things like fixed deposits or mutual funds, which are debt, which are bond related mutual funds, right? Then second bucket is somewhere where you will keep in a type of mutual fund which has some debt or bond exposure but has a equity exposure as well. Then the third bucket you will put in is which is a pure equity fund, right? So you can always create these 3 buckets, and what you can do is you pour, just like you pour water from one bucket to another, you try to start from the right side, pour water here, and then pour water into your immediate bucket. So this is one approach which you can use for your retirement, a 3 bucket approach. Now let's talk about a simple portfolio which will, which you can implement right away and get started on your journey. So let's say what to do if you have 100 rupees and you are a busy person, lazy person, low risk taker. What is the easiest plan for you? So this is what I call it as the easiest plan. What you do is that you put 25 rupees out of your 100 rupees in a Parag Parikh Flexi Cap. What Flexi Cap does is it gives you company of all sizes. There'll be big companies, medium sized companies, small companies. And this is one of the good mutual funds, which is their Parag Parikh Flexi Cap. So you can invest in that 25 rupees. Another 25 rupees you can invest in, there is a fund by Quant Tax Saver. You can either invest if you need it for the tax saving thing. If you don't need tax saving, let's say you are doing tax saving using some other thing, you can also invest in an index fund, which is like a Navi has one of the lowest cost index funds. You can invest there. 25 rupees you can spend, you can, invest in corporate debt funds or corporate bond funds, or banking and PSU funds. And these funds will give you probably 7, 8, 9% of returns over a longer period of time. And they will be more predictable than an equity fund. So they provide stability to your portfolio. Put 10 rupees in liquid or debt funds. Liquid funds are nothing but where, like, for example, bonds, fixed deposits have 2-year, 3-year period. Liquid funds invest in instruments which are 90 days or less. So think of it as a fixed deposit for 90 days or less. Okay. So there are tons of, like, SBI liquid plan is one of the mutual fund you can use very clearly. 10 rupees is something which maybe you can put in fixed deposit so that this is secure and doesn't go anywhere. Your money is guaranteed. And maybe rupees 5 you can put in gold. So if you have 100 rupees to invest, this is the suggested structure, obviously based on your life situation and different commitments. So you have, your ratios might change. Somebody might be more risk taking and might make these above 25 rupees as, let's say, 30 rupees or 35 rupees. But roughly this is the way you can build a portfolio. So whenever you are looking at investing, never ask a question, is this good stock to invest in? You build this structure and then you stick to the structure. So yeah, this is where you can start your journey. Open a mutual fund account. Mutual fund should be your first exposure to invest. Don't start with stocks. Stocks is something which can come later. First start buying mutual funds, and don't buy too many mutual funds. You can just stick to 3 mutual funds at max, 5 mutual funds. Don't get started with buying 20 mutual funds or 40 stocks. That's not the correct way to invest at all. Save money from whatever you get. Read up more. There's enough, a lot of influencers on YouTube who talk great stuff. Rashna Ranade, I know, is a very, very good influencer. Parimal Ade is another good influencer. There are tons of, good people on YouTube who really talk a lot about finance and explain it in very simple terms. Read up more. don't fall for bad financial products. Like I gave you the insurance example, right? A bad insurance policy bought by you, in that example, it took you back by more than 1 crore, right? So don't fall for bad financial products that can cost you a lot of money. So in the end, all I would like to say is, yeah, as Daniel Kahneman said this, money does not buy you happiness, but lack of money certainly buys you misery. So let's move in a direction where we don't have lack of money. And as I was showing you with some examples, you can actually make significant money even with the small investments if you deploy it correctly. In the examples I gave, I showed you a 12% growth rate, and 12% is a very conservative growth rate. It is not like I'm trying to say that 12% is a super high growth rate. Means people like me who are actively following this will probably end up growing our money at maybe 16%, 18%, right? And that's quite achievable. So yeah, so lack of money is certainly, I'm not saying money will buy you everything. Money is the only thing important in life, but lack of money is certainly a problem. I'm sure all of you will relate to that. So that's it from my side. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer questions. Please unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can write in the chat as well. Any questions, folks?
Yes, this is Pooja. I wanted to thank you for a great presentation. It's a very complicated topic, but you simplified it very well. So I had one question. You touched a little bit on retirement,
Right.
But is there a way to calculate based on, you said 25 to 30 years is what you should plan on living after retirement. So is there a way to calculate how much your expenses would be based on inflation and medical expenses and everything, and what should you plan for?
Yeah, sure. So I'll tell you a rough calculation, and that calculation can be fine-tuned on, based on every individual's requirements. So I'll tell you the default model, and these amounts will change based on your lifestyle or other assumption. Roughly, if you have, let's say, a lifestyle where you need 1 lakh rupees per month, okay, which means 12 lakh rupees per year, right? Then if let's assume that you have a 3 crore corpus, okay, you don't need to earn money rest of your life. You can invest in a current, and this will account for inflation. This will account for your lifestyle upgrades. With all that accounted, for a 1 lakh per month lifestyle, 3 crore is the amount you need. That is roughly the mapping, assuming that you don't earn anything after that. Now you can fine tune this, and you can say, yeah, for 1 lakh, maybe I'll need 2.5 crores. I'll need 2 crores because my lifestyle upgrades are not there. So all that you can sort of play around with, but roughly that is the mapping. Does that answer your question?
And yeah, it does. It does answer. And I guess investments would be more of the kind of low risk, right? During retirement.
Not exactly. Look, so this is again a very, in fact, I was talking to a friend recently, and she was saying that she has been told that, yeah, now after retirement, I should only invest in fixed deposits or savings bank account, right? Which is not true. So what happens in retirement, let's say you are 60 years of age, and life expectancy of men is probably 80, 85, women actually live longer. So maybe you have 25, 30 years. So what you do is, like I was explaining you the 3-bucket approach, right? So what you do is that first bucket, which covers your 3 to 5 years, that you put in very less risky assets, okay, which are very predictable. But now let's talk about money which you need at 5 to 10 years later, that you can put in slightly riskier assets. Now let's talk about 10 to 20 years. That is something which you can put in slightly more riskier assets, right?
Okay.
So you divide your money into 3 buckets, right?
Okay.
So, but what happens is, because if you don't take any risk at all, let's say you put everything in a fixed deposit, what will happen is fixed deposits won't even beat inflation. Right now, fixed deposits don't beat inflation, right? Fixed deposits are 5.5%, inflation is 6%.
Right.
So you will actually become poorer, and you will become poorer in your old age, which is even more troublesome, right? In a young age, you can still work hard, and you don't want to be poor when you are 80, right? You would rather be poor when you are 20, right?
True.
So it's a good idea to, you should take some risk, obviously, but you take calculated risk, right? And that's why I always talk about this 3 bucket approach. A lot of people do a complicated 5 bucket approach also, but 3 bucket approach is a reasonable approach to use for that.
Right. Okay, thank you. And the other question I had was, can you put those links for the calculators in the chat window?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll just do that right away, because
thank you.
The chat window vanishes after let me just find the link. And I think there's a site called Phonology which makes these calculators. Yeah, this is the link. I think this is the link I was showing you, so I'll just put that link. It's called as a step-up calculator, where the assumption is that every year, let's say your salary increases, you will be able to increase your investment. Did you get the link?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, folks? Anybody else?
I think there's a question in the chat.
Okay. Could you briefly explain XIRR again? Good question. Yeah, XIRRs again. Let me take this. Let me open this Excel again. Yeah. So let's take this example. So what happens in financial instruments is, when you talk about simple interest or compound interest, there is one point. So let's say simple interest. Let's take this example in a simple interest scenario. So what will happen is, 1st Jan 2008, I invested 100.
I can't see your screen.
Oh, sorry. I think I forgot. Thanks for telling me. Yeah, so let's just look at this Excel, right? So let's say in 1st Jan 2008, you invested 100 rupees and it became, let's say, 110 rupees. It's very easy to calculate. You got 10% return, right? Or let's say if this happened after 2 years, then also you are, instead of 2009, if this happened in, let's say, 2010, you know that in 2 years you have got 10 rupees extra on 100 rupees, right? So these are very easy calculation. But typically what happens in our financial instruments is, so for example, if you buy a LIC policy, you will, every year you will pay some premium, right? So let's say if you pay 100 rupees every year and you pay it for 10 years, right? And after that they give you 1500 rupees. Now what has happened is, the date of this is 1st Jan 2018. If I look at this first 100 rupees, this has spent 10 years in the system, right? 1st Jan 2008 to 2018. This one is spent 9 years. This one spent, right? So money is spending different amount of time with LIC. And this confuses. So a lot of financial products they sell is by confusing you with this. Okay. So what you should do is, you should make an Excel like this, where you put a date, put the amount in minus if it is going out of your pocket, amount in plus if it is going inside your pocket, right? And here what you do is, this is a simple Excel formula where you put XIRR. Okay. So what XIRR does is that when you have this complex input output of money, it reduces it to an annual interest rate, annual returns number. So what this means is that your actual return is 7.25% averaged, right? It is not 50%, as some people will confuse you with, And this number will change. So for example, if let's say instead of 1500, he gives 1200 rupees back to you. Now this is giving you only 3.29% return. Right? Let's say if this guy tells you that on this date, let me just insert one more row above and try to put that in this. He says, I'll give you 200 rupees back. Let's put this. Now the return value will change as per this. Right? So now this has become 7.32 because you are getting 200 rupees back.
I don't get the 200 part.
No. So what you are doing here is in LIC policies, sometimes you have that they will take this premium to you from you. So for 4 years, they take this premium, right? Then in one of the years, they will say, I'm returning you some part of the money back. Then again, you pay this money again.
Ah.
So you should make this Excel, and then you will know that exactly is your return. Don't get confused by it. Look, people sell it as, so it's something like this. Let's say if I take 100 rupees from you today and give you 150 rupees 10 years down the line, there's no value of 150 rupees at that point. Because of inflation, your 150 rupees is not worth 150 rupees, right? 10 years down the line. So this trick is used by a lot of financial planners.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So just play it around with an Excel sheet, and you'll understand how people fool using these. So any financial instrument you buy, you should ask what is the XIRR. But ad used to come na, car Indians always ask mileage kitna deti hai. So it's exactly like calculating mileage, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the guy will tell you, the insurance premium guy will tell you, I'll return your premium. But returning premium has no value. If I get the same money back after 10 years, it doesn't mean anything to me, right? So this is a mathematical way to calculate the returns instead of getting confused with people trying to sell you using all types of tricks and right. Let me check if there are any other questions. What is the best platform for investing? Is it safer through a bank, Bank of America, an app like Robinhood? Sid, I won't know that much about US right now, but I can probably find and tell you. But in India, I'll tell you the platforms which I use personally. I personally use Kuvera for my mutual funds. I use ICICI Direct and Zerodha for my stocks. In US, I don't know much. I don't have any direct investments in US, Sid. But I'll find out and probably message you, Sid, on that. Any other question, folks? Madhu, Apurva, Leena, Narhari, I'm guessing Vandana there. Should we invest in a good insurance plan on retirement? Okay, so health insurance, yes. Term insurance, most probably no. My assumption is by the time you are retiring, you probably don't have any dependents on you, right? So health insurance, yes. But the simple guideline is if you don't have any dependents on you, you don't need to buy a term insurance, right? Term insurance is basically if somebody passes away, the dependents get money, right? But if nobody is dependent, financially dependent on you, you don't need it, right? So Saundarajan, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question, folks? Please feel free to write in the chat window or.
Yeah, Birlaji, will you be sharing this recording with us?
Oh yeah, I'll put this on YouTube.
Some of us joined late and the links were not working for some time.
Oh, okay. So no worries. I'll be putting this on YouTube, and then I'll share those things on all my social media channels.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So one last question from my side. How does one treat their provident fund amounts when they retire? I mean, is it something that should be plowed back into investments, or is it something that we need to again do safe investments with, FDs or whatever?
So provident fund is more like a debt investment for you. So whenever you are planning your, you build your portfolio and keep the provident fund part in your debt portfolio. But you should use, if you are retiring, you should take that money out and just do that 3-bucket approach. And in that 3-bucket approach, you have a debt component as well. Right. So that is the way you can split it. But yeah, provident funds, again, I think the returns on them have been reducing over time, and they will continue to reduce. As India becomes more developed economy, you will have lower interest rates anyways. Right.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Samrat?
Yeah, it does. It does in a sense. I mean, I was thinking on the same lines as well.
Great, great. Yeah, I think retirement planning is something which is a fairly important thing, and everybody has to retire, right? It's not like a. So I think Vandana, you have a question about Vyay Vandana. Yeah, so that is actually a good scheme, Vyay Vandana Yojana, right? Government scheme, but that again part of your debt portfolio, right? So whenever you are planning, look, understand this, that we are trying to make it, there is some debt, there is some equity, and some of these government schemes are pretty good in terms of debt, and you should own part of them. But don't put all your money there. If you put all your money, then what will happen is you won't be able to beat inflation. So I have one more question from Purva. When you are putting money in the bank, do we make sure interest rate is higher than inflation rate? Look, there is no way for you to, no bank will give you, no savings bank will give you interest rates which are higher than inflation. Bank interest rates will always be lower because that is their business, right? Their business is to play on this, what is called as net interest margin between the loan. So the probability of a bank giving you higher than inflation returns is almost zero. And currently it's half, right? So inflation is 6% and banks give you 2.5%, 3%, at least the savings bank, and fixed deposit give you 5.5%. So Apurva, no bank will give you. There were some banks who were giving better interest rates, like I think IDFC First Bank was giving. But slowly as the banks become bigger, so sometimes banks use higher interest rates to attract a lot of customers. But once they get that customers, they will actually bring down the interest rates. I know IDFC First Bank did this, right? And tons of banks have done that to acquire customers. They offer higher interest rates. Apurva, does that answer your question, Apurva?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other questions, guys? Okay, so I guess we are good on this. Please feel free to reach out to me on any social media. Okay, so I can see Shruti's mom there. Okay, nice to see you, Priya. And so any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me on Priya. You wanted to say something? You are on mute, by the way.
For this session, it was very informative and easy to grasp for newcomers like us.
Right. So please feel free to reach out to me on any social media channel, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, any channel you can connect on. And I'll be happy to look. Personal finance is the biggest part of personal finance is personal. So each one of us has different requirements. Each one of us has different life conditions. A generic sessions gives you awareness, a broader awareness. But for doing real stuff, you need to work on an individual basis and understand their stuff. So feel free to reach out for anything. I'll be more than happy to resolve your queries or give you a direction in which you can get started.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Okay. So I guess I'll then close the session. Thanks a lot, everybody. Please feel free to reach out and let's make some money. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Wherever you are. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.